Welcome to the Forward Miami show. I'm your host, Damian Pardo. Forward Miami is a local nonprofit that works with diversity and inclusion, and we produce the largest diversity and inclusion festival in the nation in Little Havana called the Gay Ocho Festival. It is our true pleasure today to have Karla Hernandez Matz with us, candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Welcome, Karla.
Hi, Damien. It's a pleasure to be here. There's so many great things that you're doing in the community. So being a part of this is fantastic for me, and I appreciate the time of being here with your audience.
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely proud to have you here. You have a bundle of great, good energy and Latina, so always welcome. And just kind of want to hear a little bit about your background and your story and how you got to where you're at right now as a candidate.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to share. I'm a first generation American. My parents are from Honduras, and they came here, to this country in search of the American dream. And it turns out that we're able to make it an American reality because that's just how awesome of a place that we live in, and so many opportunities are available. Grew up, born and raised in this little town called Hialeah. For all
My favorite.
So, and you know what they say about Hialeah? You can take a girl out of Hialeah, but you can't take the Hialeah out of a girl. So here I am doing my thing. My dad was really hard worker. He was an accountant by trade in Honduras, but when he came to this country, he couldn't practice accounting, and so he did what all hard workers come and do here. He found a job, and he was a farm worker. He cut sugarcane, he picked tomatoes in the Everglades, and one day he was given the opportunity. They told him, look, the construction industry is booming in Miami. Do you want to become a skilled laborer? And he became a carpenter. And so he was really active in carpentry. That's how he became a union member. He realized really quickly how, non-unionized farm workers were treated, how there was wage theft, how they were discriminated in so many ways. And so he became really active in the labor movement. I grew up knowing how important the labor movement was and how to lift all boats and make sure that you support other folks so that working people can live with dignity and respect. And so when I grew up, I went to all of our public schools, went to FIU, and I decided I wanted to become a teacher, that's how I wanted to give back to the community. So I became a special education teacher. I've been doing it for 19 years. And wow. during that time, people saw a leadership role in me, right? And they trusted me. And I've been advocating for education for children, for our workforce for now 7 years as a president. And United Teachers of Dade is the fourth largest teachers union in the entire country. So it's a big shoes to fill, but I'm proud to do the work that we do in Miami-Dade. And now I'm really about advocating for the rest of the state. I want to make sure that not just children and educators in our public school system, but that all Floridians have access to the resources that they need, that we are, making sure that housing is a top line issue because we hear about it in our schools, climate, obviously education, and women's rights. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit about all of those things, today.
Oh, we will. We definitely will. I have one observation, which I've always thought of. My mom was a teacher for, I think, like 25 years in Miami, and my grandmother picked tomatoes, and she used to get up at like 4:30 in the morning, ready for her bus. But I always wondered how folks that somehow benefit from having a stronger union that's, really advocating for their wages and quality of life, at the same time we're so in fear of a change in government or communism that they wouldn't accept the politics sometimes that came along with the things that were benefiting them. How do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you run into some of that same differences.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because it's a little bit skewed, obviously, but for rational reasons. We know that people that come from, let's say, Cuba, right? They have seen how government didn't work for them. And they've been struggling and they're refugees and they've come to this country in search of a better future. But if you look at American history and you look at the work that civil rights leaders did and how they worked with unions to make sure that those civil rights were not only obtained, but ensured, you see how intricate church and unions have worked, right? Dr. Martin Luther King, he was a reverend. And I think that sometimes our folks are so caught up in the politics of their countries that they left, that they don't realize, our history and the American history and how unions help establish the middle class. Middle class exists because of unions, and all of these working conditions like the 40-hour work week, our the pensions, our weekends, health benefits, all of these have been brought because of the work of the labor movement. And just sometimes it's a little bit of a lack of education, because we know what happened to us in the past in our countries, but not necessarily the history of the country that we're living in now. So, it's a big education piece.
And yet sometimes what they'll say, at least to me, is you just don't know because you haven't lived it. And, we lived it. We saw the signs. And these are the signs that are showing up for us. We can see those similar. So you're right. It's the chicken or the egg in some ways, but it makes it a difficult climate to be able to really have good conversations about the important issues.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great point that you're bringing, and I've had this conversation with other Cuban friends that I have. Obviously Cuban families as well as Venezuelan families and Nicaraguan families. There's so many countries that we can talk about, have left because there was a government system that, took over and, in many cases, bamboozled the communities, right? Because they thought they were getting something that they didn't get. And
they bamboozled them using race, using, a lot of these other issues that are real issues, because they're real issues in our country too.
Yep. And then we're seeing them here and we're not keeping our eyes open and saying, hold on, I've seen this before. I've heard this before. And that's what's really, like mind boggling, right? That's the part that's really like impactful, because if you've lived it and you've seen it and you're seeing the book banning and you're seeing the censoring of teachers and you're seeing a wannabe dictator get in front of cameras and treat people a certain way, like, why aren't their eyes wide open,
Yeah, I think they're open on the signs they want, to see, a little bit all the way around, because I think that's what leads to a very polarized climate. And I imagine being a candidate like you, a really effective candidate who's a leader in her community, it's got to be challenging that it's so polarized that almost if you acknowledge a few issues that are in the middle, you run the risk of losing some of your base a little bit.
Yeah, it's crazy because, we always say we've never seen a time like this, but I really haven't. I've never seen a time like this. I think, it's awful, the divisiveness. And I think that that's the stark contrast, right? We have a governor that wants to divide communities and that wants to create these culture wars and pit people against people. And in contrast, Charlie Chris and I are about people, right? He's bringing community along with him by picking me. I'm a teacher, I'm a mom, I'm an activist in our community trying to, bring people up and support communities. And he sees that and he brings that to the table. We're about unifying. We're not about dividing. We want to make sure that communities have the things that they need, that we respect people and all their differences. I mean, obviously, Florida is an amazing state to live in. And part of it is the diversity that we bring to the table. We have so many people from different countries that have made Florida their home, and they're entrepreneurs and they're small business owners. And, the Latino community in general is responsible for 34% of the new small businesses that exist. So think about that. I mean, we have ideas, we're bringing in innovation, we're hiring folks, we're making sure that the workforce is expanded. So there's a lot of things that our diverse community brings. And so we're not about dividing. We want to give people opportunities. We want to bring people to the table. We want to unify and bring people hope, because we know that government can be better and that Florida can be better for all Floridians.
I think that's so important. And I think that's right on point. I think the folks in the middle, which are more and more every day, because both sides have seemed to go out further and further, as that middle gets built and built, they're waiting, they're listening very closely to the ads coming out of everywhere, both sides. And I would say some friends I have dissect the words. I mean, they're like, well, did you notice this candidate spoke about this? I don't know. I'm going to go this way. So it's funny because outside of the vote blue, vote red folks, I feel like there's a middle that's closely watching. And I like hearing what you're saying, because I think all of that really resonates very strongly with that middle base.
Yeah, I don't think that people care about culture wars. I think
At
that
all.
that's like a topic to distract folks on real issues, right? I think the top issues are affordability. People are being priced out of their communities. Now with the devastation of this hurricane, we're going to be impacted by the insurance industry, and we've been talking about insurance for such a long time. So why hasn't it gotten fixed? These are real things that real people, our community folks, know about and they care about. I'll give you an example. As the president of United Teachers of Dade, we have a building. Our building last year, our insurance was $17,000 a year. This year, they're quoting us at $64,000 a year.
Wow, that's
Think about that.
insane.
It's painful, and so people are making decisions. Am I gonna have insurance, or am I not gonna do it because is it more important for me to feed my children? And people are gonna feed their children. You can't make those are easy decisions because you're gonna take care of your families. And so then you have more uninsured people. And then what happens when you have a large population of uninsured folks, and you have a catastrophe like Ian come into your community, right? FEMA's taking, the brunt of it. What happens to us? Our insurance prices are going to go up. They could have fixed this. As a matter of fact, when Charlie was governor, he lowered, he lowered the premium cost of insurance because he took big insurance companies head on. He knew this was an issue that we needed to face, and so he did that. Workforce housing. We know that our teachers, I mean, think about this. Teachers can't live in the communities that they teach in. We need workforce housing. We need to make sure that firefighters and all our first responders and service folks, our nurses, have access to live in the communities that they serve in. And the Sadowski Fund has been rated for so many years, right? So we know that that's an issue. We know that women's rights are an issue. And these are real topics that people want to talk about, not these crazy,
Yeah,
fantastical stories or going back to 1960s ideologies with
yeah,
reverse freedom rides by putting Venezuelans and wasting taxpayer dollars and sending them off to Martha's Vineyard. I
yeah.
mean, give me a break. That's not what people care about. That's not bread and butter table talk issues. These are real issues.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm wondering, for those folks out there who don't believe the answer is with government and don't want to see government be necessarily the answer for workforce housing, they'd rather see some kind of public-private partnership or private entrepreneurial solution to grow in that space. Are you guys thinking along those lines? Are there anything along those lines that you or Charlie Chris would be moving forward?
I think that there's already a lot of communities and cities that are starting to think about, how to be innovative about this because the issue is real and it's hurting our communities because a lot of people are moving out, they're being priced out. So I think that there are public-private, ideas that are already being generated. But if you just think about the fact that we have a Sadowski Fund, that it's been rated for so many years, that this is something that 15 years ago, they said this is going to be an issue. Let's start working towards making sure that people have affordability, right? That they can
Can
live
you
in these
can you give a
spaces.
little bit of background on the Sadowski Fund for the folks that don't, aren't current with that?
Sure. So it's a fund that was established in the state of Florida that is to help affordability, is to help people, find affordable living spaces in the communities that they live in. And so it was established probably about 15 years ago. I don't know the exact date. But what's happened is that it's been rated year after year. So anytime there's like a pet project of a legislature, something happens, they take the money out of there. So this fund was forward thinking. Okay, we're gonna have our communities keep on growing. People
Mhm.
keep on moving to Florida. This is going to be an issue at some point. Let's be forward thinkers. Let's have this fund so that we can create these spaces where people can live and workforce housing is available and there's affordability. And so it was a good idea, except because it keeps on being rated, there's never enough funds to actually make it work to do what it's supposed to do. And so now we're in this situation where it gets rated for pet projects, for different things that people want to do, and now people are being priced out. So obviously, this is government issues when our government has not been thinking about what the people need, right?
Right.
Regular working class citizens, that have all these issues that they're juggling with. and we have to make sure that we're listening to them and that we're being good Floridians to everybody, not just some, not
Right.
just the popular people that make a lot of money. It can help generate funds when we're running for an election, but everybody, all the folks in the middle class, the lower class, it doesn't matter. I mean, we just have to work for everybody.
I think that's such a good point, especially, Latina candidate. People say, oh, maybe she only cares about Hispanics or Latinos, and it's not. It's really all of us. And I think you've always spoken along those lines, and that's such an important point. Do you have one specific or a few specific issues that once you're elected, you will want to work on personally?
Well, absolutely. I think, first of all, I'm a woman, right? And to think that we have a governor that wants to ban abortion and even for rape and incest, I mean, that's mind boggling, right? I can't, you have no idea how much it hurt me 3 months ago when, we were all as women just kind of like punched in our gut when we were told that we're second class citizens, because that's essentially what happened, right? That we can't make our own decisions, that we shouldn't be treated equally as everyone else. And I have an 8-year-old daughter. And to think that my 8-year-old daughter now has less rights than I've had for the majority of my life is just something that's really unthinkable and unconscionable. And so, we have to fight back against that. I believe that all women, right, that people in general, right, because I'm talking about women because this is a women's rights issue, but people in general, people are human beings. People should have the freedom and liberty to make decisions about their bodies and what's right for them and their health in the intimacy of their families. Not the government shouldn't be involved, and government shouldn't be telling me what I can and cannot do. I mean, people are making life-saving decisions because something went wrong during a pregnancy, because something happened. I mean, even the fact that rape and incest is not an exception is something that is just so unconscionable to me, because we are not in those shoes. We don't understand what that's like. And so I say this to people all the time. They'll come after my rights, but you better be sure and be ready, because they're going to come after your rights too. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg. When people start to etch away at people's rights, is because they have a bigger purpose and there's a bigger thing that they're looking for. And they're oppressing people, they're taking away rights. I mean, look at what happened in Jacksonville. They gerrymandered 2 African American congressional districts out of their voting blocks. So I mean, there's just all these things. We talked about oppressive governments and dictatorships and authoritarians, right? We're seeing so many reflections of that in the state of Florida, and it worries me. It worries me that people are not waking up, that they're not seeing these characteristics, and that they're just allowing it to happen. So I'm going to fight for women. I'm going to fight for children, for education. Banning of books has never been okay. When you try to create ignorant communities by taking away their access to information, that's exactly what's happening in Cuba right now, by the way. In Cuba, they shut down the internet a few days ago. People are fighting to get access to information, freedom of information, right? Books should not be banned. There's something to learn, whether you believe in that ideology or not, whether you believe in a certain philosophy. Having access to books is what makes enlightened communities, is what makes progress in communities. Censoring teachers, we're truth tellers. Teachers have always taught with authenticity, and to tell teachers that you have to rewrite history. I mean, we have a government that is currently saying to folks, don't use the word slavery, use involuntary relocation. We're not going to sugarcoat words. We're not going to say things that aren't real. And we have to say the good, the bad, and the ugly, because by talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're actually able to become better people, because we won't make the same mistakes that we've made in the past. And so there's so many issues like that that are important. I mean, talk about global warming, climate change. Why are we getting so many hurricanes? What's happening with the red tides that are that are being that are affecting so many of our bays? What is happening in all these industries that are impacting our communities? We live on a peninsula. We have to take care of this peninsula. So I think there's so many issues that really interconnect. are important to so many communities, and that's what we have to be talking about, not this, other gibberish stuff that's really a distraction, so that people are scared. When people are scared, people are divided. And when you divide communities, you weaken their strength. We have to be united, because in unity, that's how we're going to show power, and that's how we're going to get the things that we need.
Yeah, and I think, you hit on something, which is talking to each other and storytelling, because someone might hear what you just said and they might think, "Whoa, she's in favor of unrestricted abortion at all times," and that's not what you've said.
Right.
So it's amazing how people can take certain things and just run with it, and for their own benefit, or for power, or for whatever's happening in the moment, and not really try to have an honest conversation, which is what you're trying to do on really important issues, because that's how you get progress.
That's
you
right.
Can work, you can work with that. What are your thoughts about, in general, this election cycle so far, now that you've been, what are we, 6 weeks away? And so
6 weeks away, 6 weeks away. But I tell people that it's really happening now, because absentee ballots started going out this week.
That's true.
So we need people to, be voting. If you have an absentee ballot, make sure that you go through the whole thing all the way down, because local elections are important too. And there's so many great candidates that are on the ballot. Be informed, be educated on the issues. It's actually quite contrasting. I mean, when you think about two different parties, what's happening, one of them is trying to inflict fear, right? I mean, he does this whole political game where he sends, think about this, he uses taxpayer dollars, puts 50 people on a plane, sends them to Martha's Vineyard, because he wants to scare people about open borders. Like, he brought them from another state. Right. Again, this is fear tactics, fear mongering. He's trying to, play like psychological warfare with people's minds, and who are the enemies, and why are we letting, and it's not like, these are hardworking Venezuelans who are refugees, who come from probably pretty well-to-do families, because they were able to figure out how to get to this country with their babies, with children. And we really need to be more like the people of Martha's Vineyards, who have been really good neighbors, and, embrace them and try to figure out how to help them, which is very much what a lot of our residents are doing right now in Southwest Florida. I mean, I'm in Tampa right now. We stopped by Fort Myers yesterday, and we're seeing how communities come together. And my message is that there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. At the end of the day, you pinch our skin, we all hurt, we all bleed the same color. And I do believe that in the root of people, we're good. People scare us, and they put these ideas in our mind about hate, about racism, about treating people a certain way, but we're not born that way. We know that children learn these things, and we can attribute it to so many things in society, but we should all be working together, like so many families and communities are working together right now in West Florida, trying to make sure that they support each other, that they have a system of just support while they're trying to get through, all the damage that Hurricane Ian did. But they're very contrasting campaigns. What I realize is there's some really amazing people all over the state of Florida, really good people from such diverse backgrounds, and that we can't judge a book by its cover. There are, people doing really amazing work and have these great ideas, or just the things that they're doing in their communities. And really, this is a time for us to come together to bring hope back into communities, to work together and make sure that we lift all boats, right? That all communities are supported, and that people go out and vote, and that they vote for change.
No, that's great. Listen, I want to make sure I didn't put words in your mouth on the abortion issue as I was thinking about it, because what I've heard from folks in the community sometimes is, look, I come from this country or that country, and I've seen what is a right kind of abused when it's by some. So as a public policy issue, I want to make sure that you're able to kind of clearly identify, as a woman and mother, what you would want that policy to look like.
Look, we have to at least make sure that Roe versus Wade, which was overturned, that's our floor.
Right. That's like
That's our
Got it.
floor. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had 50 years of Roe versus Wade. We can't
Yeah.
take that away. That
Right.
shouldn't be taken away. That's wrong. We have to make
Agree.
sure that
Yeah.
people have the protections, and that whatever, look, I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you why a doctor would say, look, your baby or this mom is in a critical situation right now, and this is life and death. That's not a decision for me to make. But I do believe that there are experts and there are doctors and there are people that can make those decisions, and we shouldn't penalize doctors that are trying to save people's lives, that are making decisions that are helping people, because that's what's happening here now, right?
Yeah.
So we can't do that to the medical field. I'm certainly not God, and I'm not going to judge people. By the way, I'm a Christian woman, and I was raised in the church. And just because certain people, have a certain view, doesn't mean that I can impose my views
Right.
on everybody else. I believe that people and God gave us the freedom to choose right
Right.
versus wrong,
That's a
red
big.
pill, blue pill, right? Like whatever we decide to do, whatever decision we decide to make, it should be based on our decision, not government telling us what we can and cannot do.
That's fantastic. I'm going to ask you a difficult question, I think, for some folks, which is if you had a magic wand and you were able to take one thing and change it here in Florida, what would that be?
Wow, that is a difficult decision. Question, because there's so many things. Look, I'm going to go back to my roots and to who I am. I'm a teacher. I think that if we really support public education and give our educators the resources that they need, it would help so many things, right? You would help to eradicate poverty. You would break poverty cycles. You'd create a very strong economy, which is obviously the economy of the future of our workforce. We would have more enlightened folks making better decisions about everything, about systems. I think that if you fully support education, if you take care of our babies, of the little ones, from the beginning, we can do so much good on the long term. That is a strong and powerful investment. I can tell you that as a teacher who's been, seeing this for so many years. Florida is 48th in the nation in how we
Yeah.
pay our educators. 48th.
Yeah.
We're right at the end. We have 9,000 vacancies of educators in the state of Florida alone. That's a self-inflicted wound. We haven't helped support our education system.
Do
And
you
guess who suffers? Our kids.
Yeah, no, and do you think the charter schools have helped that or hindered that by being like another ecosystem, you
Yeah,
know?
charter schools and even the voucher programs, like all of that is it's such a complex situation, right? Because we know that these are systems that exist, and my position is we have to fund where the majority of kids have been going, right? Public schools are accountable for 90% of the children in all of our state of educating them. And so we can't defund one system to
Right.
fund another. We should never defund any one public
Mhm.
school or any system, right? People talk about, so many services that our communities give, right? Social services. We can't defund one social service to fund another.
No, I think agree with you 100%. Carla, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Are there any last words you would like to share?
Make sure you go out and vote. The last day to register to vote in the state of Florida is October 11th. We want to make sure that all voices get heard. You have the power of the vote. Make sure that you're well informed. If you want to know more information about our platforms, visit charliechris.com. You'll see all of our platform, all of our issues, what we believe in. And of course, if you want to donate to us, that there's a place that you can also do that there too.
That's great. Karla Hernandez Matz, candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for joining us today on the Forward Miami Show.